Welcome back to the show. And now we're getting into our Untold Johhny football review, and we're joined by a special guest, Trenton Morales. He's been on for many past episodes. Thanks so much for being back on, man.
What's going on, fellas? How y'all doing?
Doing good. Doing good.
Not the red solo cup.
Hey, I'm drinking that
Red
water,
Solo
boy.
Cup.
I'm drinking that water,
The vibes of
boy.
this episode, you can already tell it there.
Sponsored by Red Solo.
Yes, first sponsor.
Sponsored by Johhny Football, baby. Let's go. Shout out to LSU going 2-0 against Johhny Football.
But to start the overview, this documentary traces the meteoric rise and precipitous fall of football star Johhny Manziel via interviews with friends, coaches, and Manziel himself. This was also directed by Ryan Duffy. And to start it off, I mean, this is such an interesting period because, like, when he even looking at Texas A&M going to the SEC, like that was such a huge change at that moment. Looking back at it, because we're used to seeing them in the SEC now, but looking back at just how big of a move that was crazy. And then what Johhny Manziel was able to do revenue-wise for that team and just putting them on the map, that was an insane run. But looking at your initial thoughts of this documentary, how it was put together, Trenton, what did you think about it, and just what stood out early
on? Well, I mean, when I saw the announcement about it, I said, I'm watching this. There's no question about it. I knew I was going to watch it by myself. My wife, to this day, I mean, almost 14 years later, does not like Johhny football. I mean, she loves football, but she does not like Johhny Manziel. And so I knew I was going to be watching this one on my own. But when I watched it, I mean, watched it, I was like, I thought this was it was put together really well. I almost wish they probably would have done like maybe 45-minute episodes and kind of spent a little more time on some things. I mean, they really kind of like truncated a lot of stuff. But you know what? But also looking back on it now that I think about it, it's like, I don't know if I want to spend a whole episode on like Johhny Manziel's drug use or like Johhny Manziel, like, and kind of like his spiral that he went through after he left Texas A&M. But overall, I thought it was really well done. I mean, obviously, it became really nostalgic for me because I remember I was actually in. My wife and I were at an Alabama football game. That when they talk about that first big SEC game against Florida in College Station, we were in Bryant-Denny Stadium in a box suite for the doctor that she worked for at the time, and I remember like watching it on TV. I was like, what is Florida doing right now? This is Texas A&M. They come from the Big 12, right? We should be mowing these guys down. Of course, they ended up winning the game, but like I remember that there was one play in the game where he like Manziel sneaked in for a touchdown. I was like, oh, this dude. Okay, he's got something to him, right? And then it just kind of took off from there. As they said in the documentary, they just kind of got to the point where they said, all right, just go do your thing. And the rest, as they say, is history. So obviously, at that point in time, I was, in my early 20s. So it was a really impressionable time, early in marriage. We watch football every Saturday as a young couple. And it just caught us at the right time. So that will always be something that kind of like sticks in my mind of like watching Johhny football do what he did over the course of those 2 years. And those documentaries kind of like brought it back of like, oh man, like he actually did run through everybody on that season, and even to the point like where Cliff Kingsbury said that a dude played a game hungover and like dropped 50 points on Mississippi State. I'm like. Of course he did. Of course he did. I wouldn't expect anything less. I would say there was nothing in that surprised me. Like, even when they revealed that, oh, hey, we lied about the family money, I was like, oh, of course you lied about the family money. None of that surprised me at all.
It was funny because me and Tyler, we watched it, and he said when he was looking at that second season, he's like, you know what, you can actually say that second year Manziel was even better than his first year because he was even
completely agree,
electric, even more electric in some ways. He's just as a passer, like the running. Obviously, you saw that more so in the first, but as a passer, he was even more seasoned and was just picking apart. Even though the team record wasn't as good, he was picking apart defenses, with so much ease. But to you, Savon, what were your initial thoughts of this documentary and just the nostalgia factor of it as well? Because I think a lot of people had nostalgia looking back at this one.
Yeah, this documentary, it was like I had mixed emotions about it. And I think this was a slap in the face of Reggie Bush. Just thinking about what he had to go through, and then now they're parading Johhny Manziel's career around
Yeah.
like he didn't do some foul things and he didn't break so many rules that he still has his Heisman Trophy.
Yeah.
Now they're doing a documentary on it and just literally parading it around I didn't understand why they wanted this documentary out about Johhny Manziel. Like we haven't seen or heard him on a podcast doing interviews in the past 6-7 years about what he did at Texas A&M or what he did when he was in Miami signing all these autographs and getting money for it. Like I know all this stuff. We had somebody in Pensacola who played linebacker while he was there named Steven Jenkins. He was number 45, then he went to number 8. He was there where Von Miller was there. So we heard stories about what Johhny Manziel was doing at Texas A&M when he was coming back home. So it's not nothing that I haven't heard of or known about since Johhny Manziel has been out of Texas A&M. But I do think this is a slap in the face for Reggie Bush, who got his Heisman Trophy, who I think was a better face of the NCAA and a better face of his team than Johhny Manziel was.
Yeah.
Because he got his took for taking money, and we already knew who Johhny Manziel was getting money from all of this stuff, and he still has his.
And as far as we know, Reggie Bush was like an upstanding citizen. He didn't break no laws.
Yeah.
He didn't get in trouble with the police or anything like that. I mean, he took care of his business and played great football.
Yeah.
You know, and even like, you know, even like comparing, like, you know, I don't want to get too far ahead, but like you think about his pro career, right? You know, obviously, if you think about the last like 15 years, you know, who's one of the people that's automatically propped up as like one of the biggest busts in pro football? Jamarcus Russell. Which, listen, he's a bust, right? He's a bust. But Johhny Manziel was just as big of a bust as Jamarcus Russell was, right?
Sure.
Yes, he was.
But nobody ever talks about it that way because it's Johnny football, right?
Yeah, Johnny football.
The mantra. The mantra, Johnny football.
That's right.
Even think about the cash, the cash celebration for the like everything he was doing was like viral and meme worthy, and it was just like it was just in and out. It was a 2-year run, and then for the NFL, like, and that's another thing when a player doesn't translate to the NFL, to you trend and that's a star in college. Like, what does that say to you also about the fact that there were times where in the documentary, coach was saying like he wasn't even like reading the playbook. He was freestyling out there.
What did they say? It said he had logged 0 hours on his iPad.
Yes, logged 0. And he admitted it was like, bro, that's nothing to be proud of.
He was trotting out the Cardell Jones line about, I'm not here to do school, I'm here to do football, right? I mean, he was that before Cardell Jones, right? But yeah, I think what it shows though is that, man, that chasm. Okay, the chasm from high school to college is wide and vast, right? That chasm from college to NFL is even bigger. Like you have got to be a dude if you're going to play professional football, especially if you're going to be a quarterback, right? And I mean, it's not just in football. I mean, there's been times I've gone to see like college baseball games, and being right here in Atlanta, I've seen the Braves play so many times over the last 6 or 7 years I've been here, and it's like there are plays that a college guy is struggling to make that pros are making in their sleep, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with professional football. Like there's just guys who are going to make plays that you will never see on the college level because they just don't have that, right? Talking about Jamarcus Russell, phenomenal college quarterback, right? I mean, led LSU to many come from behind wins and was celebrated. But like, dude, like you can't just throw a ball so hard into a window because guess what? A safety is just as quick now. And so, and they know your tendencies, they know what you're going to do. And similar to what you're saying, Will, it's like you can freestyle all you want, but you can only freestyle for so long, right? Yeah. Eventually, you're going to get destroyed, and you got to be able to stand in it. And I think at the end of the day, man, that's on the Cleveland Browns for like thinking they can actually do that, right? That is all on them to be able to think that we can take this guy who is skirting by on, just making these crazy plays happen and think it's going to translate to the NFL. It just doesn't happen. The NFL is much slower to adapt things that you see on the lower levels, right? I mean, the NFL is just not getting to the point where it's starting to incorporate elements of the spread. But the spread's been in college for almost 20 years now.
Right. Yeah, it really is crazy. To you, Savon, what does that tell you? Obviously, Trenton he explained it perfectly, but what did that? What also stood out to you about that? Just that inability to transition from college to NFL, and it really not even pan out for him.
Yeah, to excuse me, to piggyback on what Trenton was saying, it takes more than talent to be an NFL star or just an NFL player. It takes being in the weight room. It takes looking at film over and over and knowing the cues, knowing what the defense is going to throw at you, knowing just having the knowledge of the game to slow the game down in your first and second year. And we've seen that the Browns have terrible history of picking quarterbacks with Brandon Weeden, Brady Quinn, Johhny Manziel. The list goes on that they have terrible scouting. And I don't understand how they didn't scout to see or talk, because with scouting, when a guy is in college, they go above and beyond. They talk to the players, they talk to the students, they talk to the teachers, they talk to the coaches, they talk to the people around them. Is he in the weight room? Is he watching film? How much film does he watch? Like, what is his home life like? They ask a bunch of questions for scouts because So they're very detail oriented to make sure the player that they're going to draft. I think they got caught up in the hype again with this quarterback, Johhny Manziel, who didn't show a strong arm to be in the NFL.
Yeah.
He was a short guy. He didn't have any pocket presence. He was loose. Sometimes him creating, an extended a play was cool in college. I think Johhny Manziel was a prototypical college quarterback.
Yeah.
Just like, I hate to say it, Timmy T, prototypical college quarterback.
Yeah.
Did he have some success a little bit? Yes, but I think he was more so a better college quarterback than an NFL quarterback. That's why he switched positions at the tail end to go to tight end, just to see if he could play more. But I just think it takes more than to be have that raw talent to be a good player in the NFL, because everybody has that raw talent.
Sure.
Everybody.
Yeah.
The chances of you making a team is slim. The chance of you to last even 3 or 4 years in the NFL is slim. So Johhny Manziel, he didn't do enough to become an NFL superstar.
Absolutely. And I'll get into our next topic from 1 to 4 stars. What would you give this documentary? I would go with 3 because it was an interesting story to tell. It definitely took this one definitely took the college football world by storm. But the ending of this really didn't sit well with me, because it almost was like, okay, Johnny's just still Johny. He's not changing. He hasn't taken any responsibility. I'm like, what did that ending really mean?
That's
like,
a great point, man.
Why didn't you string the pieces together to show some accountability taken and just like some actual real remorse? I feel as though it just was like, well, that was a great run. I'm living my life now, and that is what it is. Like, it just felt like a very empty ending. But to you overall, Trenton, from 1 to 4 stars, what would be your rating for this documentary?
Yeah, I'm running with a 3, man. I mean, yeah, it's definitely not my favorite sports documentary I've ever seen. I think there's a lot more dramatic things I've seen in a documentary format.
Yes, there's some that blow this one out the water.
Oh, for sure.
The one with the penguins,
right? Or you think about the one on the U.
Oh my goodness,
man!
Those are always
blows this one out of the water, or like
any of the 30.
The bad boy, the bad boy Pistons teams. Like, that's a great documentary, right?
Yeah, that was too. Yeah, that was good.
Because that's not just like one dude. That was a whole team who was bad to the bone, right? So yeah, I mean, it's a 3 overall. I mean, it kept me like locked in, because again, I mean, it was just as people, we're just a sucker for like remembering what was, right? It's like, I remember watching all of, especially like when Johnny turned it on. Like, I think I saw at least every game that he played in, at least a piece of it. And some of them the whole game, like, and just what is he going to do next, right? So the factor of like going back and revisiting those moments is always going to be kind of key. But yeah, I feel similar to you, Wellington. It's just like it just really kind of left this taste of like, he's just I remember somebody asked me, they were asking me about the documentary. I was like, he said, what's Johhny doing? I said, he's chilling on a ranch somewhere. that's
He's not
it.
doing anything.
Yeah, he's not doing anything, right? And I think that's probably for the best of his life at this moment. It's like, dude, just don't do anything with your life. Just stay alive at this point. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. To you, Savon, what would be your particular rating for it?
I'll give it a 2 because it's nothing I haven't seen. They didn't bring anything to the table that was like shocking. Like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, it was just a collective of things that people already heard. Now we just get it in a documentary, and Johhny Manziel is confirming it on a Netflix documentary. So
he just gave us details on top of that, right?
Yeah, I'm telling you, bro. Everything he said, I've already heard. So
I never heard about the. What does he say? That he blew through $5 million in the club one night. I never heard about that. Like that dude.
I'm trying to tell you, bro. Everything. It was nothing. Bro, Johhny was he was a star. He was a superstar.
Magnetic.
Like, even just being with him, it was just like we heard stories like, bro, Johhny pulled them all. Johhny used to knock him. Like, I've got those stories. Like, it was women chasing him. He was at one point. This is something he didn't say that we got information, and he was like, he was knocking. He had like 2 chicks a day, knocking them down, like 2 a day. Like, add that up. That's also Ric Flair type vibes, brother. Woo! But that's what I'm saying. Everything that was told or like highlighted in this documentary, I've heard already. Or had some some stories that kind of was like, hand-me-down stories, but I've heard of it. So, and then I'm still perturbed about the Reggie Bush thing. All of this stuff. And it wasn't like when he was in college, they didn't have NIL. It wasn't too far from when Reggie Bush was in NCAA. He was with USC. So that kind of, but I like how it was shot. But yeah.
At the end of the day, the NCAA is the most useless organization in the entire world.
Cheers to that. Where's your real solo cup at? I'll cheer you to that. I'll cheer you to that.
I don't know if y'all saw this past week. Mason Smith, the defensive lineman for LSU, got suspended for the Florida State game next week, right? Because of a signing he did last summer, and because he got injured in the Florida State game last year, he was out all of last year. So now the NCAA came in and said, we're going to suspend you for the Florida State game. So because you need to sit down and serve your punishment, because this was before NIL came into play. I'm like, y'all are a bunch of losers.
Was it NIL in place last year?
It was like right before it kind of went into place, I think. I'm like, y'all are a bunch of losers. Yeah, you sat there and watched an entire conference disassemble itself and let all these teams go everywhere they wanted to go. But yeah, oh, hey, kid takes a little money for signing an autograph. Oh, you can't do that. You need to sit for a year. That's probably the piece of this documentary kind of gets dampered down now, is that all this stuff that he did, you can do now. Could you imagine the money that Reggie Bush and Tim Tebow would have made in college today?
What you say, brother?
They would have made millions of dollars. Or even let's take it recently. Joe Burrow would have cashed in big time.
Cash big time. Chase Jefferson.
NIL's
been $10 million.
That whole LSU team would have cashed in, man.
Every last one of what's the running back's name? Number 22.
Clyde would have cashed in.
He would have cashed in. Yeah, it would have been a frenzy, man. They better be glad they did it now. They would have been bankrupt trying to get these kids to do.
That's right. That's right. And start paying them in crawfish, not money. Hey man, I ain't got the money, but here's some seafood. Here you go.
That was funny, Tim. That was a good one.
And now get into our most memorable moments. I had autograph mania. Also, Johnny's agent attempting to fake a family emergency to get Johhny out of taking a drug test. Johnny's Hills on Vegas Vacation.
Bro,
That was so terrible, bro. Man. Johhny not being satisfied with everything he had gotten and feeling empty inside, this $37 million man, and then finally welcome to the SEC. To you, Trent, were there any scenes in this or moments of this that kind of stood out to you the most?
Man, the scene about him going home was, I mean, if there's anything about this that kind of like, it struck a chord, was like when he's like, I have nowhere to go but go home. And just seeing his parents like try to take him in, try to mend their relationship. It was a moment of like just realization that it's a tale as old as time, right? A person receives all this fame, receives all this money, and they have no infrastructure within their own lives or discipline in their own life to know how to handle that and navigate it. They crash and burn, and in some cases they end up dead, which almost happened to Johhny, as we saw. But then also, like, there's also moments where they find a way to go home, and it's like, for me, that's I hope on the other side of this, like 10 years from now, that maybe he jumps on whatever he does, like whatever Johhny does. I just hope he comes back and is like, yeah, I really messed my life up, and hope that he finds clarity and whatever it might be, faith, something, just to kind of ground him, right? But just that piece about going home really stood out to me, kind of his own kind of prodigal son moment, right? Where it's like, man, listen, I got people around my parents right now who are eating just fine, right? I'm out here trying to waste away with all this stuff. So for me, that just really stood out to me, of like, just the ability that he was able to, the chance that he had to go home, and just hoping and praying that
that's beautiful.
Hoping and praying that he gets it right. I don't know. I can't speak to Johhny. I don't know what his I'm assuming his circle of friends is probably still the same. But just
nothing's changed.
But there's a piece of like, man, get a chance to go home. It's a great thing.
To you, Savon, what were some of the scenes and moments of this that you kind of remember the most?
Yeah, that was a good point, Trent. That was one of them. That even though you blew through all this money, you did this, you did that, you could always come home to your parents. Not always. Some parents won't let you come home, but you have a safe haven. You have a place where you come and just reconcile or whatever you could. But the one that stood out the most, and I've kind of figured this, when they reached out to his agent, it was telling him that he didn't watch film, and you can tell that he never watched film when he played. He looked like he was lost most of the time. He just relied on his ability, and that only lasts for on a certain extent of time in the NFL, because you got guys who run 4.4, 4.5 coming at you. You have safety that's run 4.2, 4.3, who have been in the league for 6, 7, 8 years, who've seen everything that that came around the league, and they seen all types of quarterbacks. So that just let me know, like, he didn't take football serious. He thought he bought into the facade. He bought into the character, and thought that character was going to take over. He's going to be this great guy like he was in college.
Didn't believe in practice. Didn't even believe in practice. It's just like, I don't have to practice as hard as you guys.
You don't have to practice, bro. You got to know what the defense is going to throw at you.
Yeah, but I mean, he alluded to that in college. Like, I didn't go to practice. I just showed up whenever I wanted to show up, right? So it's part of me wonders, like, how many superstars do actually kind of skip out on practice, right? Who's like
not none that play for Nick Saban.
Oh, yeah. Right. You don't care who you are.
I'm about to say that. I'm about to say that, Savon. It's like, but you know what? For all the glitz and glamour that he got, he's a Heisman winner. That's all he's got, though. Yeah. Oh, cool. You won the Chick-fil-A Bowl? Good for you, dude. You ain't got no rings, though.
You had to come back to beat, bro. That's insane.
That was insane.
You had to come back behind to beat Duke.
I still never forget that game, though, because that was just like...
I never forget that game either. Because remember how they won it on a pick six. I was like, oh man, their defense helps them win the game. How about that? Yeah, because
their defense was not good.
And that's another
No,
thing. That's another
no.
thing I wanted to get to. Like, what's the one game that you guys look back on from Johhny Manziel is like, yo, that's still the one that's just etched in my brain. I mean, the Alabama one is just
Dude.
it's gotta be
Alabama.
Alabama,
right?
man.
Alabama,
Both,
hands
both,
down, bro.
both of
Both
them.
one, yeah,
Both
both
Alabama
actually,
games.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yes, bro.
yeah.
I mean, just that. I remember that first touchdown he threw to Ryan Swoop. Who, man, I wish that guy would have got concussed all of his because I feel like he would have been a stud receiver in the league if he would have been able to stay healthy. Kind of that Wes Welker kind of vibe build. But no, like, yeah, just, he runs, fumbles the ball, catches it, and then throws it to the wide open. And I was like, oh, that's a cool play,
Heisman
bro.
moment.
And obviously for me, like, again, I'm coming with all of my bias right here as an LSU fan. Like, to see them just shut him down the way they did for 2 years in a row was like, oh yeah, he is human, right? And there was nothing extraordinary that they did. They just like, oh, you can't run this way. That's really all they did, and then they like forced him to stay in the pocket and throw the football, and he couldn't do it,
Which
right?
is, yeah,
And he
he's not
couldn't
that
do
type
it.
of quarterback.
So,
No.
but yeah, both those Alabama games, and I'm trying to think about. It was actually from that 2012 year. I think it was when they played Auburn, and of course, by this time Auburn had either already fired their coach or was going to fire Chiswick, and it was just. I remember Jordan Hare Stadium was like bone like
Oh
skeleton
yeah,
empty.
yeah.
And like Johnny was just like, you know how you see the image of like hold him by the shirt, like boom, 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 like just mercifully, like with no mercy whatsoever, just beating down Auburn. And by that time, he was like locked in and just like destroying everybody.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but I wonder though, like this is always the big what if, right? Is if Alabama doesn't play that super emotional game against LSU the week before Texas A&M in
That's
12,
the thing.
do they?
CJ
Yeah,
yelled, yeah.
do they go ahead and beat? And Nick Saban's quote that he gave after that game was he said it felt like the Bluegrass Miracle at LSU, like, and so I think it was like 2002 they beat Kentucky on his last second Hail Mary, right? Incredible play. The next week they come play Alabama at home, and Alabama shuts them out 31-0. Like, because like at the time the team that had the maturity to like be able to like reset and like, okay, we gotta play the game this next week. We can't just live off of like what happened, right? In the same, I think in the same capacity, I think Bama just like super emotional game with LSU the week before and just ran into a buzzsaw in Texas A&M because, I mean, as you saw, I remember that game. Like Bama was close to coming back and
They
winning
were
that
about
game.
to. They were about to come back.
And they lost it in the end, right?
Yeah.
So, but and of course the next year, I think as you saw, like with Kevin Sumlin, who I think is a good football coach, but I don't know if he just doesn't have that extra gear, right, to be able to be totally successful to that next tier of like football coach. Like the next year, the defense just got worse and worse and worse and worse, right? And you have great offenses, you can put up points, but you can't stop anybody. That's what happened that next year with Johnny
At
Football
all.
in the 13. Like,
Could
he
not
had to
stop
score 50
anybody.
points by himself just to win the football game.
Yeah. Were there any other games, Savon, besides the Alabama one that you kind of remembered, or was that kind of the main one?
No, that was the most profound one for him because most of those touchdowns was in the pocket presence. He showed that he could do it. He had some type of ability, but that wasn't his game. That's not where his strength lies.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I was looking for at the most. Like, can he be a pocket passer? Because the LSU game did show me that you can game plan against him and it can work. Then Alabama tried to do that several times.
Mm-hmm.
But that game he was just on. Maybe he watched film that week.
The one week he actually watched film was against Alabama. I gotta go to come practice.
Yeah.
And now getting into
what about you, man? Like, was there any games outside of that one that stood out to you?
The Auburn one, as you mentioned, that was a moment. that was a moment type of game because like he was so locked in because there are some games where he was fully locked in, fully poised, that was one of them. And like you said, that when you can like deafen a crowd like that big, and just it's like you can almost hear a pin drop. That's just special. That was a top tier moment for him. And
Do
now
y'all remember
next
the
to
first time when he did?
the cash.
I'm sorry,
Go
real
ahead.
quick.
Nah,
Yeah,
the
do you
cash.
remember the first time
cash.
you saw him do this? And I was like, oh, I hate this guy now.
He ripped it off.
He ripped it off.
He ripped it off.
And then Kevin's son was suspending him for a quarter against Rice. I was like, bro, you're so weak, man. Hey, you wouldn't go do nothing to stop this guy from playing football. Like, anyway, I'm sorry, I could rant about this.
Quarter.
Continue on, Wellington.
And for memorable quotes I had, there's who you are as a football player, and there's who you are as a human being. Also, I almost felt like I had an alter ego. I wanted to be Johhny Football. Johhny Football never had a bad time. Also, I'm finding things that truly do make me happy without having to be in a spotlight every day. And then finally, I want to be able to put this story out there and just let it be what it is. That quote, when he said, I just wanted to let it be what it is, that said a lot to me, because that's almost like this with the entire field, this documentary just was it just, hey, this is what it is. I'm going to leave it out there and keep it moving. To you, were there any memorable quotes?
Again, what was the purpose of this? But go ahead, Trent.
Two, I think, kind of like three kind of stick out to my mind. I don't have them word for word, but like number one, hey, Agent So-and-so, can you talk to Johhny about watching his playbook? Because he has logged 0 hours on the iPad.
Bro.
The second one, when they were talking through how they were having him drink water and Pedialyte to kind of basically flush the hungover nature out of his system so he could pass a piss test. And then when Cliff Kingsbury talked about like him like basically rolling out of bed drunk to kill Mississippi State on the road. Yeah, I mean, just what a guy. What a college quarterback. What a college quarterback.
Wow.
What a guy.
Johhny Football.
Johhny Football, man.
Were there any quotes that stood out to you in this one, Savon?
Nope.
As I said, I was be like, I'm Johhny Football.
Nope. None of these stood out. We can move on. None of these stood out to me. Boo.
You will know, Trenton, when Savon is out on something, and Savon is fully out on this. He is like, no.
Oh, yeah.
Bro, it's a slap in the face, bro. It's parade. There's no purpose of this documentary because he has not changed.
Yeah.
Anywho, because we're about to go, what's the element of this documentary did you like the most?
I already know what you're going to say.
I'll read it in the future. I can read it in the future. Go ahead.
To you, Trent, was there a particular element of this? Because I do feel as though showing specific details of like the behind the scenes of what he wasn't doing, and we knew obviously the public knew certain parts of it, but not as detailed as this. I thought like bringing that to the forefront was interesting. But what particular element of this documentary did you like?
Yeah, just tell the truth, man. Like if you stand behind what you did, why hide it? Just tell the truth. And I think that was probably the most refreshing thing. Is like, even though like disclaimer, we'll roll the disclaimer at the bottom of the screen right here. The views expressed in this documentary do not represent the representatives of this podcast right now, right? But like, yeah, I mean, yeah, there's something refreshing about him just being like, yeah, that's what I did. Yeah, I blew $5 million in the club. Yeah, I hung out with Drake. Yeah, I did this. I did that. It's like, cool, man. Good for you. Good for you that you actually can be very honest about what you did. Not trying to like, well, man, just listen, the pressures of college football, the pressures of being an NFL quarterback is kind of really heavy. No, that's what you wanted to do, man. You just wanted to party and use football to get you the means to be able to party with whoever you want to party with. Good for you, Johhny, that you were honest about that. Hey, go to rehab and get some help.
I'll never forget when he was on First Take the summer after like his first season. It was like when Miami was playing San Antonio and he visited there and he was given this, just this well manicured speech about what he was going to do better and how he learned. And I was like, he is not going to do any of that, and you guys are buying it. Like, it's just like the media, everything he said, every like built up speech that he was, coached on and prepped on, it never came to fruition.
Yeah.
They got a good PR team, bro.
Yep.
That's all PR.
That's all PR.
Bro. Very coached.
That's all PR.
Very coached to PR, yeah.
Absolutely. And getting to our last topic, how will this documentary age going forward? Savon, you talked about how there have been issues, like you didn't find the purpose of this, there have been better documentaries. Like, what do you think, can this possibly, can there be, what other documentaries similar to this can do better at actually, telling the whole story, and what can be, a cautionary tale for other athletes in this position?
I think with any documentary, sports, animals, whatever, safari, I think the purpose of the documentary is where you go. Like, that's the foundation of it. And just thinking of a documentary, it takes a lot for you to rewatch a documentary.
Yeah.
Because they're so long. You have to. Where did Wellington go? I'll keep it going. I don't know where he went. I don't know where his video go. But he's offline. Oh, his internet probably. I'll keep going though. But with the documentary, it takes a lot for you to rewatch it. And if you go into a documentary not feeling the purpose of it, just like a glorified party boy. It's like he's Van Wilder. I don't know if you guys watched that film, and it's based on a true story. He's an actual comedian. I forgot his name. White guy, scruffy beard, always takes his shirt off. He's with he does the Bear podcast. That movie is about him.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Went to school for 7 years. That's basically that movie is about him. Yeah. So that's what it felt like. It felt like the next thing I'm gonna do is do a movie on him to glorify what he did. It's cool. You're in college. You're enjoying yourself, but you're a student athlete first. Yeah. You're the face of Texas A&M, and so doing this. Looking at this documentary, I don't think it has a purpose. I just think it was just like y'all didn't know this. He's going to tell you everything y'all didn't know. So it doesn't have a purpose. I don't think this is going to be rewatchable, even if it's Johhny football. Yeah. Because a documentary takes a lot for you to rewatch it in itself.
Well, I mean, listen, man, we live in a day and age where like good football players are always going to be there. Like, there's always going to be somebody who surpasses somebody else, right? And I think, obviously, like, if we look at like our grandparents and our parents, right? I mean, they had like a dude maybe every 10 years, 15 years, and be like, oh man, that was a guy, right? He was amazing. Yes. And today we could surpass somebody. I mean, you think about that. I think it was the kid who was it 2021, I think? Like he broke one of Joe Burrow's records from 19. I'm like, what? Somebody already broke Burrow's record on something? Like, how in the world does that happen, right? But it's because of the day and age we live in. Because, listen, everybody is expanding. Everybody is growing. Everybody is like, the latest little thing that somebody else has got. I'm pretty sure the school down the road has as well too, right? Now, obviously, what's going to be the biggest impact is like how the portal continues to affect how these teams look, right? Because I think the small schools are going to be wrecked by this year after year. Especially you think about your South Alabamas, the UABs, all that kind of stuff, right? Like, they're going to be rated every year by these bigger schools because, listen, it's just the nature of the business, right?